Do you think feminism is a cult?
Women can actually be more morally punishing than men. Housewives never made cereal from scratch.
How do we make meaning out of the apocalypse?
Looking for some Hopecore. We need some Hopecore.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Hopecore, the podcast for people who are trying to stay emotionally hydrated during the apocalypse. Lately, it feels like everyone's in a cult, whether it is crypto or CrossFit or astrology or Swifties, or obviously there's like a little bit of a political situation happening right now, where there's people who are very tribal and into that. So I wanted to know, are there any good cults left? Like, is that a possibility for us to have a good cult? And that's why I called Amanda Montiel, my new friend and most in demand podcast guest. I swear to God, like so many people are like, you have to have her on. Like, you guys have to talk to each other. You have written so many incredible books. I will list them. You're the author of Word Slut, Cultish, and The Age of Magical Overthinking. She's also working on another book. We're not allowed to talk about it. Wait, am I allowed to talk about it?
Of course, but I love the like illusion of scarcity. I'm so bad at keeping secrets.
Me too. Wait, me too. Me too.
I wish I were better.
I feel like I start talking before my mind decided to talk. and then I'll say things I'm like, why? Like, why are you
I know.
sharing
I
everything?
wish I could do that like very clever sort of rebrand thing where
Yes.
artists like go dark and then reemerge. And I'm just like, but I can't.
No, I can't. I can't be mysterious.
No, me neither.
Even when I try, it doesn't work. Okay.
know.
Well, now I know why people wanted us to be together so
Yeah.
much. This is going to be fun.
We're going to spill a lot of secrets.
We've been yapping nonstop. So Amanda is one of those people who can explain the entire human condition with one meme and with a linguistics term. She studies how language manipulates us, comforts us, and occasionally ruins our lives. We're going to get into cults. We're going to get into ideologies. We're going to get into wellness. We're going to get into Taylor Swift. Yeah, we're going to start there actually, because we're always talking about Taylor Swift. Obviously, she has a new album out, but it is rare that there's not someone who's either very excited or very mad about something that Taylor Swift has done.
True.
And many people commenting about it in the chat. And I did lose my mind this week. This is like group therapy, this whole podcast. So let me just say it. I had feelings about her album, you know, musically, and I'm a fan. And I was like, okay, this isn't exactly what I like. And then all the backlash made me then be like, actually, I do love it. And it is good, right? And I was like, why is this so
Isn't that
charged?
interesting?
And then there was so much discourse about it that actually felt like we were devolving into a psychotic episode. Like every side just was like so intense. And there was a lot of conversation, which is something I've been thinking a lot about lately, which is like the trad wife versus girl boss discourse, and how both girl boss and trad wife are insults. Both of them are slurs against women.
That's
and
right.
You study that so much. If you haven't been online, which thank God your brain had not been affected by this psychosis that the spell we all seem to be under. So there were people who were upset that she was writing so much about liking her boyfriend and being horny for her boyfriend and wanting to have kids with her boyfriend. And that this means that she was becoming a trad wife. There was a faction of the internet that was like claiming her as theirs that, tends to be more conservative. And then there was the liberal, sort of brain rot, oh no, like she's not a feminist anymore.
Right.
And then the culmination of which was a post that I saw claiming that the new Taylor Swift album is spiritually Israeli.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was like when I was like, we have fully lost the plot. I don't want to know what that means.
People are hearing a lot of dog whistles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Microaggression. Like there's just a lot of feelings. And so can you help us dissect what's happening to us right now?
Sure. I do think that the patriarchy has scammed us into thinking that women should be divided into two categories, good, evil, right, wrong, trad wife, girl boss. That sort of like psychological splitting also happens during personal and global times of crisis. And I think it's also a way for cult leaders, and I would consider like those who benefit from a lot of the problematic systems in our society right now to be cult leaders of sorts. They benefit from engineering chaos and divides among their flock so that everyone can just like stay busy fighting while the social media overlords profit is one example. And I think, women are oftentimes, more victimized by these systems because, there's just like a slimmer margin for error for for women. And the more marginalized you are, the slimmer that margin for error will be. And we tend to, sort of elevate women onto these pedestals. And when they violate our expectations of them, they fall, pretty violently from those pedestals again, because the pedestal's really narrow due to that slim margin for error that we set for women. And so I think that girl boss versus trad wife war, if you will, ideological war, is completely manufactured to keep women fighting so that the, patriarchal tech overlords can remain in power.
Yes. Okay, so I'm fascinated by this because every time I talk about a problem, I 100% recognize that I'm like part of it. I feel like I'm almost being de-brainwashed from the like trad wife hate. I'm talking out loud right now. Like I'm processing this as we're talking about it, but I was on a panel earlier this week and they put me on stage with like the founder of the Trad Wife magazine, the Evie magazine.
Yeah.
Brittany Hugaboom. So essentially I'm on stage. There's Brittany who believes that women want to be saved by men and literally, said this on stage. It's not a caricature of what she's saying. And she believes we need to embrace femininity.
It's so funny because when I hear, that someone wants to embrace femininity, I'm just like, oh, so a drag queen.
Oh, that's funny.
And that's the thing too, is that I think like a lot of these statements in a vacuum and without context can be characterized any which way.
Right.
And so they're kind of like this Rorschach test where people can project whatever they want or don't want them to mean onto them, which can be dangerous because it's a threat to critical thinking, and even critical thinking has become this like buzzword and empathy has become a buzzword and all these things. But, what I mean by that is like, we need to have a little bit of patience and like apply slow, deliberative thinking sometimes. But when we're being like whipped up into a state of frenzied tribalism, which social media discourse encourages us to do, then, we interpret certain phrases or whatever sentiments that might not actually mean something polarizing and threatening to indeed mean something polarizing and threatening. There's just no incentive to slow down a little bit right now. But anyway, that was a sidebar.
It's such a good point. And I think that's what happened in this, panel. There's a person that is supportive, I guess, of the trad wife movement. Then there's this feminist academic, Vicki Chablo, who's like, this is all horrible, essentially, and believes that we need, systems that allow for female empowerment, gender equality, so that women can inhabit whatever roles they want to, and who believes that this sort of glamorization of the soft life. What was interesting is that I was looking at the data, the word or the hashtag tradwife got like 800 million views last year, and half of those views were for women under 18 to 24.
Yeah.
And
did you know, I learned this a couple of days ago interviewing Adam Alexic. He goes by the etymology nerd online. I don't know if you've come across his videos,
cool.
But he makes really engaging linguistics videos and has a book out called Algo Speak. And he articulated that tradwife is slang that came from 4chan. It's like Wojak incel terminology that we've broadened. So that origin story is telling.
Wait, so teenage boys came up with tradwife.
Yeah.
And now it divides grown women, but it was invented by men.
And correct. It was invented to dehumanize women.
No way.
Yeah.
So it was invented by liberal men or just
by like self-victimizing incels on 4chan, misogynists
who were putting down women who were traditional, or
they were trying to both.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. That's the kind of internet etymology of that term.
Well, that kind of tells you everything about it, right? Because I'm looking at this Taylor Swift tradwife discourse. I'm feeling literally that I'm losing brain cells as I'm consuming it. Also identify with there's a previous version of me, I guess, inside of me that sort of agrees with some of the people who are upset about the fact that Taylor Swift is glamorizing, being a wife. And I'm like, why was that ever bad? I
think because it's been weaponized and we are, living in increasingly polarized times. I mean, I've talked a little bit in my work about the embrace of nostalgia during times of present pain, and there are some really delusional embraces of nostalgia happening right now. And I think hashtag tradwives making cereal from scratch on Instagram or TikTok is an example of a past that never existed. Like 1800s housewives never made cereal from scratch. 1950s housewives never made cereal from scratch. It's a sort of like glamorized parody of the past.
That's such a good point. And I think they were making like Uncle Ben's, like they were like meaning in the 1950s.
Yeah.
It was like
I mean, in the 1950s, they were making like instant mashed potatoes because that was like the cool technology of the time. And in the 1800s, they were making whatever they had for survival. I think basically like those embraces of nostalgia happened in a big way during the pandemic when everybody was online and and not knowing where the future was going to go. And studies of nostalgia, like brain studies of nostalgia, show that when we think about like rosier reinterpretations of the past or a past that never existed, it actually lights up the same part of our brain that envisions a hopeful future. So like in a positive way, Hopecore, nostalgia on some level helps us envision better days to come, you know, when the present feels painful. You know, nostalgia has been weaponized by certain political movements and power-hungry social media figures who might align with those political movements. Again, I don't think in a vacuum, longing for a time pre-iPhones is a bad or political thing. I don't think longing to reconnect with nature and the earth and live like a simpler, more present and grounded, nature-connected life, touch grass is a, you know, slang phrase for a reason. I don't think that is a bad or political thing, but there have been a lot of dog whistles infused into some of these really natural apolitical drives. People just want to make sure that they're on the right side of history, well, some people, or that they're, you know, not alienating their tribe. And if they perceive that some messaging might alienate them from their tribe, they're going to immediately stand against it, especially if there are social media incentives to make them do that right away.
Oh my God. And there's never been a greater one. I think the last decade or so, politically, there's been one side that's been seen by people who disagree with that movement as a cult, right? Like, you're in a cult, this is a cult.
Well, everybody sees the other side as a cult.
Well, tell me more about that, because I think it's becoming clear to even people who were telling other people that they were in a cult that maybe were in a cult too.
Yeah. Well, this is sort of like the basis of my work. So I'm sure people who are listening to me and have no context and are like, what does this chick talk about? So my background's in linguistics. I see the world through a language lens, or rather, like, I guess I hear the world through a language lens. Specifically, I'm interested in sociolinguistics, where sociology and the study of language intersect. And so my first book was about language, gender, and power. It's like this quick and dirty crash course in feminist sociolinguistics and like these subtle ways that language has been used to disempower women and how we can, you know, own our voices in a society that so often aims to silence us. There's really nerdy cool stuff in there. My second book is about the language of cults. Cults from Scientology to SoulCycle. So this wide interpretation of cults, cultishness, cultish thinking. That book was not only inspired by my interest in language and power and sociology, personally by the fact that my dad grew up in a 70s era cult against his will. So my dad spent his teenage years in this pretty notorious cult named Synanon. There have been like a few memoirs and documentaries about this by now. It started out as this alternative drug rehabilitation center for so-called drunks and dope fiends that then extended to accommodate so-called lifestylers, or people who just wanted in on the blossoming countercultural movement during the 60s and 70s. And that's the era during which my grandfather and ex-step-grandmother, all these people are dead, decided to join. They were like bored with suburban nuclear family life. They wanted in on this experiment. And so they brought my teenage dad and his two toddler-age half-sisters to live on this compound where people shaved their heads and people were reassigned new marital partners and had to go on crash diet. It was a weird, traumatizing thing. And, you know, the sort of place that we would now think of as like a classic cult, right? As I grew up, I started to notice that the language tactics that my dad would describe in Synanon, and I started to clock that those Synanon-esque language tactics, like the buzzwords and mantras and, you know, thought-stopping axioms and stuff like that, they could be found in everyday life too. You know, when I moved to LA, like in LA fitness culture and wellness culture, and certainly in political discourse and very much on social media. So I set out to write my book, Cultish, thinking like, you know, I want to know how those other gullible suckers get, you know, roped in by this language. You know, what are these linguistic techniques that power-hungry leaders from Jim Jones to Jeff Bezos use to influence their followings? Those people, not me, surely. But researching and writing that book was a really humbling experience, because I learned that, oh no, actually, like, I have been susceptible to these exact same linguistic techniques, just not in cultish scenarios that we might classically conceive of as cults. And I realized, you know, oh wow, like one of the romantic relationships that I was in my early 20s was totally just a cult of one. Like I was totally in a cult. I was just the only person in it because that guy wasn't charismatic enough to, you know, rope in a whole flock. It was just me. But yeah, and like, you know, I have been sort of conditioned by buzzwords that certain mentors have used used, or social media influencers that I really admired. And, pop stars can inadvertently or on purpose use this kind of language. And the consequences and stakes are not always the same. Obviously, like Taylor Swift's cult following, founder of Synanon's cult following, are not the same at all.
What do they share in common?
There's definitely a sort of us versus them divide, insiders and outsiders. There's this sort of, among, some really intense Swifties, this kind of unquestionable worship. Like, if you threaten my leader, you threaten me, and I need to defend this person. They are seen as, beyond reproach. They can do no wrong. That can be dangerous. I mean, again, the dangers are very different. Like, the dangers for someone in Synanon might be completely sacrificing your life savings and all your outside relationships. If you did decide to leave, you might, be physically threatened, because in the end, Synanon became a pretty violent place. For Swifties, it's more like psychological violence that might occur with language alone on social media forums. You might kind of get lost in a virtual world, invented conflicts that could take you away from IRL community. That's
death threat. I mean, my friend Deb Fisher was the showrunner for Jimmy and Georgia, and they had a Taylor Swift joke, and
exactly.
she literally had death threats. I mean, it was full blown threat on.
I hope she's okay. That does feel psychologically threatening, because like our brains and the way that we respond to stress, the same as we've responded to stress since long before the internet, since long before fandom. Our stress response systems have a really hard time telling the difference between someone leaving a really harsh comment that makes you feel like you might actually be in danger and like a predator wrestling in the bushes. There is obviously a difference, but our bodies might not know that, and there can be lasting effects of that.
And doxing leads to real life, right? Like
100%
leaked, and
exactly. No, that does happen. I think the average person might think like, oh, too much confidence, that is surely a problem that other people suffer from, not me. Like, I hate myself. I'm normal. I actually came across one interesting study that found that women can actually be more morally punishing than men, and more confident in their sort of moral righteousness. And that can explain some of the like anti-fan behavior that we see, or extreme stan behavior that can sort of like distort the difference between an enemy and a fan, like snark forums and stuff like that on Reddit.
Do you think feminism is a cult?
I'm not going to say that. I'm definitely not going to say that.
I think it is. I think based on what you're saying.
I think that some corners of feminism can definitely incite cultish thinking.
Like what?
Well, I think like, white feminism. I have a dear friend who's a brilliant journalist who wrote a book called White Feminism: From Suffragettes to Influencers and Who They Leave Behind. Yeah, actually, I do think that there can be some sort of cultish incentives to the marriage of feminist ideals and social media. For example, a woman who is new to their feminism, let's say a white, able-bodied woman who started learning about feminism during Trump's first administration, sees someone post something online that they now know is a little bit ableist and not totally in support of intersectional feminism, let's say.
Sure.
They might post a sort of call out in the comments on that post, paints them as more enlightened.
Yes.
There was a fascinating book that I read while researching the Age of Magical Overthinking called Mistakes Were Made But Not By Me, by a pair of psychologists named Elliot Aronson and Carol Tavris. This book is about confirmation bias and cognitive dissonance. And they have this great quote in there where they were like, it's those who almost live in glass houses who throw the first stones. If you catch someone make a mistake, an infraction against intersectional feminism online that reminds you of one that you almost made yourself, you might feel even more morally punishing of them.
Wow.
Because you're thinking like, oh, I just narrowly escaped making that same mistake. And because of the clout incentives of social media and you wanting to get likes on your comment or seem more enlightened, which is kind of cultish, you might feel the impulse to call them out and then bask in the glow of all those likes that come in.
And why? Is it because you are trying to redeem yourself?
I think so.
Okay.
I think you're trying to, again,
be like, I'm not like that.
Right. You're like, no, I'm on the right side of history and I'm in this tribe of enlightened feminists and I'm nothing like you. And I need to show everyone else how enlightened I am. And maybe I'll throw in some buzzwords to show how in the know I am and what an insider I am and what an outsider you are. This is not to say that I don't think people should be called in on social media or that there shouldn't be pushback on social media if someone expresses something that you disagree with. But I think it is worth interrogating our own clout incentives, or what is causing us to call other people out or to point out their infractions. Is it because we're really trying to educate them or move history in a direction that we support? Or is it because we're trying to be our own little cult leader in a way?
Do you think that the response of one side being cultish can turn you into more of a cult?
Totally. Oh, yeah. There's something called the backfire effect, which shows that if you present a valid argument contradicting someone else's belief, they'll just dig their heels in. It is famously hard to change anyone's mind, but actually a lot more possible to change our own minds. There's ego here. I think, part of that overconfidence bias, we often think more than we do. We often over attribute positive outcomes to our own behavior
and negative outcomes
to other people's behavior. As hard as it is to convince other people of your argument and as good as it feels to win an argument, if what you're really after is change or being on the right side of history, whatever that means to you, I have a pretty strong idea of what that means to me, then I think it really starts with educating yourself, humbling yourself. My work has unfortunately and painfully been pretty humbling. But that ends up feeling a lot better. I see a lot of polarization just in my friend group. I know exactly how I feel about things, but getting into scream fights where other people feel put down, I know from studying cultishness and cognitive biases is not effective. And so there's another sort of thought-stopping phrase that people will use sometimes to end conversations. They'll be like, oh, you're just both sidesing it. If you attempt to fill a sort of mediator role or draw a connection or try to perceive the humanity or the motivations behind other people's thinking, I think that can be dangerous. I do want to see what is motivating other people's behavior because, you can't cure a problem without diagnosing it. And not everybody is going to be able to stomach that act. But I feel like I can.
If we have less empathy, we're off. Right?
And not everybody is going to be able to tolerate hearing and attempting to understand people who are so violent and who are very threatening to their humanity and to their safety. And I have my limits too, but I've been inoculated talking to cult followers and cult survivors for so long. And so I feel like I have a certain tolerance for being able to hear some pretty violent stuff. And I don't like to hear it, but it does help. It helps you understand, especially if you have this framework ooh, that's survivorship bias, or that's a thought terminating cliche. Once you have those frameworks, you can digest what they're saying a little better.
And thought terminating cliche is that just a conversation ender? It means because that's also trying to reform the internet. It takes probably a village, but it is something I think about all the time because I love the internet. I'm a 2013 millennial, sort of in the digital revolution. I was going to become a social worker in Montreal and then moved to New York and happened to be able to sort of ride this wave of excitement and where there was so much possibility on the internet. And I loved feminism, I loved activism, and all of a sudden I could, connect with so many more people, right? It was the beginning, again, not to have the nostalgia bump and be everything was great in 2013, but I do think the 2010s had that element where we, obviously social media, people were using it for bad, but a lot of people were using it for good, and politicians had not yet sort of weaponized it in the way that it is now. And so is there a way to reform the internet? I don't know. Every time I post something, I'm just hoping, what if we're talking in the comments? What if we have, is nuance impossible on the internet?
I'll define what a thought terminating cliche is first, and then I'll try to formulate and answer your question. A thought terminating cliche is a cultish language tactic. I discovered it because the psychologist Robert J. Lifton coined it in the early 60s, and it describes a sort of zingy stock expression that's easy to memorize, easy to repeat, and aimed at shutting down independent thinking and questioning so that cultish leaders can remain in power. There are so many thought terminating cliches that also show up in everyday life. Like, it's all in God's plan. It is what it is. Boys will be boys. In conspiratorial groups, they'll say things like, oh, well, you just need to do your research. It's like, you mean fall down a TikTok rabbit hole? Like, what do you mean? Read peer-reviewed studies? Like, what do you mean? If they just don't like or, you know, question the validity of what you're saying, they'll just be like, oh, you just need to do your research. You know, like fall down my rabbit hole and then we'll talk. I do think that increasing media literacy and just like highlighting all of the irrationalities that are at play in people's behavior and that are at play in our own decision making is really important. I really believe that I have become a more critical media consumer, especially in a reactive place like social media, because of learning about these biases. And I'm still like at the beginning of my learning, you know, like hundreds of these biases have been described. I am not immune to them. Now, at a certain point, like there's only so much that we can know and learn. And so in those moments when we feel really stressed and overwhelmed, I think like it is important to take breaks. I also just think like diversifying the media that we consume, you know, like, yeah, be online, but also like read books, consume a lot. And then when you can't bear it anymore, touch grass.
Because the algorithm, again, coming back to your original point, like the algorithm is not designed for you to have diversity of thought or for you to have, you know, intellectual.
It's designed to keep you agreeing so that you'll stay on the platform.
Exactly. I feel like we are over therapized. I mean, we as like, you know, the portion of us that had the ability to do therapy every week during the pandemic because we like broke down, right? But even I think there's been a rise in just like Instagram carousels about mental health. Like everyone's a mental health thing, you know, expert, right?
Yes.
And yet a lot of the things that you're describing is us having a lot of biases and like not understanding people. We overanalyze ourselves, but then when it comes to other people, we're like, well, you're a Nazi, right? Like it's not so like, oh, I'm psychologically splitting right now, which by the way is you brought up earlier.
Is a psychology term.
Is a psychology term. If you are a child in a neglectful or abusive environment, you're going to often do this thing called psychologically splitting, where either the adult who isn't responding to your needs is either bad or good, and that's because you're 5 years old and you don't have the ability to see nuance or understand that.
And
your
adults
parent,
do this too. Like if you're going through a breakup, a coping mechanism will be to conceive of your ex as a villain.
That's the narcissist. Also, like
yes. Well, now we have terminology like they're a narcissist.
Yes, they're a narcissist,
and maybe they are.
Maybe they are.
I mean, I'm sure you've seen that Jemima Kirk meme or quote that gets shared around where she this was the woman who played Jessa in Girls, who's like, I think all of you are just thinking about yourselves too much.
Yes.
And it makes sense that as beautiful as it is that mental health is being destigmatized, it also makes sense that the rise of mental health discourse would correspond with the social media age when there is so much emphasis on individualism and personal brands. It's like therapy is just one more way to focus on yourself. I'm obsessed with my therapist, and I think that destigmatizing mental health is extremely important. But yes, there are negative side effects to the misuse of some of this terminology on social media, particularly by people who want to build clout by establishing themselves as a mental health authority, and maybe they're not. You know, I've written about therapy speak. I got to write this really interesting piece for Harper's Bazaar a few years ago about specifically the rise of therapy speak in the workplace.
Yes.
And it's really interesting because it's a wonderful thing to be able to express nowadays to your boss, like, my anxiety is really high today and I might need some accommodations for that. And now that's a word that people understand. And so if you have like a generous boss or even a human boss, they'll be like, oh, okay, like, you know, take your time, you know, maybe I don't need that project until tomorrow, or, you know, what can I do to support you in this moment? But there are some disturbing side effects, including, you know, I had one source tell me that some higher ups at the company where she was working would attribute mental health to the company and anthropomorphize the company as if the company itself had boundaries and needed its feelings validated as a way to like manipulate employees into working longer for the mental health benefits of the company.
Are people too.
Yes.
They have feelings.
Corporations have feelings too.
My corporation has depression.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm just like, whoa, like these are growing pains though, you know, and
that feels so late. Why is everything so late stage? Don't you like,
oh no.
How do we escape? Sorry, not to like continue your point. How do we not fall into the nihilistic view that just everything is great. Like, I feel like everything, like you just saying that feels like that wouldn't even have made a Simpsons episode.
But I said something good too. That
you're right.
That
Yes.
you know, if you
Bosses
say
are-
like, I'm struggling with this mental health
Yeah.
thing, you can say that to your
Yeah.
coworkers now, and they'll understand you.
Yeah.
Whereas before, you know, the environment, you might not even have had the terminology, but even if you did, a coworker might be like, oh, suck it up, like you wuss, you know. And now like there is an increase in mental health stress and struggles, especially among young people. You know, studies do reflect that.
Oh my God,
and social
totally.
media plays an enormous role in that.
Yeah.
There are good and bad things happening at the same time, and it's really easy to focus on the bad things. And I do feel like you are entering a period of nihilism where you're just like, holy shit, like there is nothing good else in the world. Read some fiction, you know, like do some psilocybin microdosing, go on a hike. You know, there are things to remind you that like there is good in the world.
Yeah, it's that so much of it is two things, right? Which is overthinking, which you write a lot about, which I definitely am guilty of. There are times in my life where sure, I'll be on my phone and that's part of it. I will think that I need to like go into a 12-month rehab center. I'm like, I am so ill and I need to reimagine my entire life, or I'll be homeless in 30 days if I don't figure out my business, model for the next. And then I'll go outside for 5 minutes and I'll be like, wait a minute. Oh my, everything, what? Like, and I don't recognize her. And that is just rumination, right? And the thing with rumination is that it happens when you're scrolling. Obviously, it's a form of avoiding the overthinking. That's certainly how it feels immediately if you're overthinking something and you look at your phone and you see a funny video of a puppy. But if you're on your phone for an hour, you are ruminating while you're watching, right? Like, so it's these like task positive activities, which you just described, right? Going out, walking, gardening, literally anything.
Laugh.
Yes. Yeah. Like see a person in real life.
Exactly.
Even if you don't even know them, like just go out and see other people. Is like a form of just task positive, which will fundamentally change your life. Okay, so we are running out of time. I have so many more questions I want to ask you, but you write a lot about overthinking as self-protection and this sort of idea that if we analyze enough, we can protect ourselves from heartbreak, from failure, and from the apocalypse. So how do we make meaning out of the apocalypse? Small question.
I don't have the one and only answer for how everybody can make meaning out of the apocalypse. And if someone suggests that they have the one and only answer, they're probably a cult leader. No, I can tell how I make meaning. Yeah. I write, and this is one of the reasons why I'm writing fiction now, because like I was just like, yo, I need to lift off into a world of my own creation. And a little bit of escapism and dreaminess, I think is really beautiful. We as human beings are such a unique species, and I'm not the first person to make this point by any means. We mythologize the world as an attempt to make sense of it. Like we tell ourselves stories. We're storytellers. Sometimes
that's how the brain understands information.
Exactly.
It's not even like it's not something you can like
100%. And sometimes it can bite us in the ass when it can make us conspiratorial. Like, oh, this happened because of that. And it's like, no, like those were just like small random misfortunes. You know, the so-and-so was not conspiring against you. That type of myth making and storytelling can be destructive. I also think that like if we can, with a skeptical twinkle in our eye or like a glimmer in the back of our brain that's telling us like we're just making this up, meaning making is just kind of fiction, then we can participate in sort of mystical things like a soul cycle class where the lady on the bike is like, yapping ridiculosity at you, but it feels good for 45 minutes. Just don't let it follow you into the whole rest of your life. But like, we can do those things, and we can, engage in spiritual practice, or we can, writing for me is spiritual practice. I make a lot of meaning out of the bad things that happen to me and in the world by like spinning a story out of it, or talking about it with your friends. A lesson, or even just like a beautiful tale. Like I derive a lot of meaning and a lot of joy out of turning just my life into a story and my friends into characters, and that's not always a good thing. Sometimes it's like too delulu, but that's how I make meaning. But we're all going to make meaning differently. Some people will make meaning by seeing something horrible happen in the world and decide to get involved with an organization that helps those people. And I've done that too. Like I'm not just like whatever in my own world. But doing things to help get outside of yourself, or reinterpret these negative things as something positive that you can share with others, is how I make meaning.
Yeah. So if we were to create a hope cult, a cult of hope, what would be the command? Like what would be the core beliefs?
Weirdly, I think that most cults kind of initially pitch themselves as hope cults.
Interesting.
We're going to solve poverty. We're going to solve racism. We're going to solve, oppression. We're going to solve whatever. like
your unhappiness, the fact that you can't afford eggs. I mean,
yeah,
whatever,
or
right? Whatever's hard
like the fact
you.
that you can't find love or whatever. Like I think they all. I mean, optimism is oddly like the most manipulatable quality. That's what all the cult followers that I interviewed and cult survivors had in common. It's just this optimism that like the world can be better and I can be a part of that change if I just align myself 110% with this person in this group.
Right.
Hope cult, I mean, I would involve yourself in a bunch of different hope cults that allow you to have like one toe dipped in and don't make you like put your whole self in it. You know, if you're involved with a group that doesn't allow you to also participate in that group and that ideology and that reading material, then you know that might be a sign that it's too cultish for comfort. But yeah, I like to be in multiple cults.
Oh yeah. Is there a cult we don't know is a cult that you're like, that's definitely a cult, but people don't realize?
I mean, that's what my entire podcast sounds like a cult is about. Like every week we discuss a different cult followed cult-like group from the zeitgeist to determine how bad is it really. Like this group sounds like a cult, but is it really? And if so, is it a live your life, a watch your back, or a get the fuck out level cult?
Right.
So we'll cover everything from, you know, Beyonce fans to van lifers to Labubu to anti-vaxxers. You know, we'll cover everything. Yeah. And some of them are more lighthearted and some of them are more serious. But we cover a lot of stuff on there where at first blush you're like, how is Trader Joe's a cult? And then we talk it through and we're like, oh, okay, it is tapping into some stuff that one was a live your life.
Right. What makes you more likely to join a cult? What's the singular like quality or characteristic?
Well, I think they're feeling existentially high and dry. You are disconnected from community. You need to fill that void somehow. You are hopeful that there is a way to fill it, you know, and you have resources. Like a cult leader is not going to target someone who's like truly down and out. They want somebody who has a community that they can tap into to recruit.
MLM style. Yeah.
Or whatever. Yeah. Like what cult wants someone who like has no money to spare and no friends? Yeah.
And it could even be just energetically, right? Like no one robs an empty house, you know, like
period.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. We've been all over the place in this conversation. I've appreciated it so much. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us. I hope Hopecore is not a cult, or maybe I do. I don't know. After
it sounds like a live your life to me.
Hopefully a positive cult. Is that possible?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. A positive something that's cultish.
I'm going to read a comment from our last episode. We have an amazing community of people who listen to this podcast, and we want to remind you to leave comments, leave reviews. It helps our podcast get to more people and turn this into a real cult. Oh yeah, we talked a lot about how clubbing could save democracy.
Clubbing?
Yeah, because like, basically the art of gathering. Priya Parker wrote I don't know if you know.
Yeah, I love the art of gathering.
So we were going back and forth about how just like having better parties could literally like save us from authoritarianism.
Oh my God, you should come to my Halloween party.
Oh my God,
I throw a Halloween rager.
I am so happy that came up.
Yeah,
it's my favorite holiday.
Good. This year our party is called Club Vampire, and it's going to be like a demonic vampire rave.
I love it. At your house?
Yeah.
Wait, do you love parties?
I do.
Oh my God, yes.
I love parties. I'm a theater kid. I love theme parties.
Yes.
I love gathering.
Oh my God.
I love the art of gathering.
Too. Okay, well, this is amazing. Not only was this a great interview, but now it's a great Halloween. I think there's something so magical about everyone existing in this like made up space.
Tell me about
for
it.
a day. And it's just like, oh, we can do whatever, we can be whatever we want.
Well, get your vampire outfit ready.
Okay, I'm literally ordering it right now. Sam left a comment. So please keep leaving comments. It's the best part of my day when I see them. Sam left a really good comment on our episode with Priya Parker, which was, please DJs who don't just play a playlist, 3 cry emojis. Basically, we were talking about how we need like really good DJs. Like it's a vibe.
There's going to be a really good DJ at Club Vampire.
Oh my God, stop.
We're flying him in from New York.
What?
He's one of our friends, but we conceived of this idea with him. He's like this demon twink DJ. It's gonna be perfect.
I'm obsessed. I need it to be Halloween right now.
Yeah.
And then he wrote all caps, bring back electronic remixes and business casual fits. Basically bring back blazers. I think if we all start wearing blazers and going to the club, we're gonna democracy will be
this
back.
Person and I are so on the same wavelength.
Yeah. Sam, you're on it.
I almost wore a blazer today, but I was like, it's a little formal, so I went with a sweater vest.
I'm sad I'm not wearing a sweater vest now. Next time you'll have to come back, Amanda. We had such a good time talking with you. You're so smart and brilliant.
You're sweet.
And I feel so much more hopeful and aware, you know, because it's not one or the other. It's not like you block everything out to just tune out what's happening in the world.
It's skeptically hopeful.
Skeptically hopeful is what we do here. So thank you for setting the stage for that to be a possibility for us. Bye, everyone. We'll see you next week.
I'm on a plane, I'm at the bar, in your DMs, in your car, looking for some Hopecore. We need some Hopecore. I want some love, I want your heart. I got your number, that's a start. We have your Hopecore.